So you want to know about Dreadnoughts? Well, I thought when putting the script together for this video it'd be really fun to shine a light on some of the most badass characters in 40k, but as it turns out, learning about Dreadnoughts can make you really sad.
Let's not start this video off with the sad things about Dreadnoughts. Let's leave that for later. Instead, let's give our precious audience some of the good stuff first.
Ah, you mean Rylanor.
Rylanor, Bjorn, the Anchorite, Hecaton Aiakos. We should even talk about Deeberan Kalimakon, because he's in fact a Dreadnought, even though he's not a Space Marine.
Excellent idea. So in case you haven't heard about Rylanor, aka Rylanor the Ancient of Rites, this guy was a Terran-born Space Marine of the Emperor's Children Legion. He actually fought alongside the Emperor of Mankind during the latter days of the Unification Wars against the last Techno-Warlords. Though sadly for the Emperor's Children, their Legion would be decimated to a fraction of their true strength prior to the reunion with their sexually ambiguous Primarch Fulgrim, due to some shenanigans with their gene seed. However, Rylanor was one of the very few Space Marines to actually persist through this calamity, and after the Emperor was reunited with the androgynous Fulgrim, Rylanor became the first ever Space Marine to bear the Palatine Aquila as a standard into battle, which was a huge deal at the time for he and his brothers.
Rylanor would eventually experience his first death at the hands of the Eldari during the Great Crusade, and would be interned into a Contemptor pattern Dreadnought equipped with a Cares pattern assault cannon and a Power Fist with a built-in flamer, and would continue to serve with great enthusiasm.
Sadly though, as the heresy unfolded, Rylanor would go down to Isvan III in place of the legendary Saul Tarvitz, basically dooming Rylanor to an awful fate, but giving Tarvitz the opportunity to warn the other loyalists amongst the traitor legions of their imminent betrayal.
As a massive bombardment of virus bombs and other heavy fuckery lay waste to the planet, Rylanor had a literal mountain come down on top of him. And there he would lay for a very, very long time. Eventually though, the Ancient of Rites would craft a makeshift beacon to his location, luring in his gene-sire Fulgrim, now a demon prince of untold fuckery. Rylanor would taunt Fulgrim, insulting him for what he had become before committing the most intense chattery ever undertaken by a Space Marine, and set off a dormant virus bomb that laid beneath him, blowing up Fulgrim's physical form to bits and irreparably damaging his soul.
Sadly though again, this wouldn't kill Fulgrim, but Rylanor's final act of defiance has seared his name in living memory as one of the greatest named Dreadnoughts ever.
Now, let's talk about Bjorn, or Bjorn, as he should be called.
By all means.
Bjorn, or Bjorn the Fell-Handed, is the oldest living Dreadnought the Imperium has at its disposal. Now, we could talk about all of the shenanigans that Bjorn took part in during the heresy, and how he slew a demon king of some kind, as well as his heroic actions as he fought alongside Constantine Valdor during the burning of Prospero. But the thing that makes Bjorn really special is his long-standing and continued service to the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves. Bjorn was interned in the aftermath of the Proxima Uprising in M31, when he was placed into a Castoferum Dreadnought, or what would eventually be known by the community as the Boxnaut. Though it wasn't just any Boxnaut.
It was a standard fitted with a Dreadnought assault cannon, however this will be replaced over the millennia with a plasma cannon, twin-linked las cannon, or even the Space Wolves' unique Hellfrost cannon as the Iron Priests saw fit. Not only that, but the Iron Priests of the Space Wolves specially crafted a one-of-a-kind Dreadnought-sized lightning claw called True Claw, as homage to Bjorn's preferred weapon in his previous life.
Surviving all the way from the heresy to the era Indomitus, Bjorn has served with unparalleled distinction, awakening in times of great crisis to not only fight alongside the Space Wolves, but to actually sit with them and provide tactical counsel and be the chapter Scrampa figure. He is almost certainly the most experienced Space Marine alive in the current setting, and is regarded as the oldest too.
He may not actually be the oldest.
What do you mean? Of course he's the oldest.
Now, he's credited with being the oldest, sure, but there's one more loyalist named Dreadnought running around that may be just as old as Bjorn, and if he's not as old as Bjorn, he's certainly not far behind.
Oh, you mean the Anchorite?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
You see, the Anchorite is a loyalist, word-bearer's Contemptor Dreadnought from the heresy.
Though, he wasn't a Dreadnought during the heresy, right?
He wasn't, no, but we'll get into that.
Alright.
You see, during the Battle of Calth, when the Wordbearers fought the Ultramarines, one lone Wordbearer who still believed in the Emperor's divinity even after the burning of Monarchia actually surrendered to the Ultramarines during the battle. He was so disgusted and sickened by what his legion had become that surrendering became a far more appealing notion to him than continuing to fight.
Isn't surrender totally alien to Space Marines?
It is. He even takes up a vow of total pacifism, which is another reason as to why the Anchorite is such a unique character. Sometime after the events of Calth, the Anchorite would become imprisoned, and he remained in prison for pretty much the next 10,000 years, only being interred into a Dreadnought sarcophagus as a means of keeping him alive, when he actually tried to unalive himself. You see, the newly forming ecclesiarchy had a very important use for the Anchorite. He knew the Lectitio Divinitatis by heart, and so the creation of the imperial cult centered around putting the Emperor on a podium as a god was actually largely based on the Lectitio Divinitatis, and so much of the imperial cult cult as it is, even in the era Indomitus, was actually influenced by the Anchorite's recitations.
In the novel Apocalypse by Josh Reynolds, we learn that the Anchorite is still kicking around in the era Indomitus, and eventually some of his ancient word-bearer brethren learn of his existence. Realizing the importance of the Anchorite, Rebute Gilliman tasks a contingent of Imperial Fists, White Scars, and Raven Guard to keep the Anchorite safe from the coming tide of traitors. Eventually though, the mighty trio are overrun by Chaos Space Marines and a fuck-ton of demons. The Imperial Fist in charge, Lieutenant Haid Calder, goes to the Anchorite demanding his help. This is when the Anchorite finally abandons his vow of pacifism and charges onto the battlefield.
Chanting the Lectitian of Divinitatis throughout the battle, the Anchorite eventually uses what can only be described as lost words of cultists to dispel the demons in a blinding flash of light, which then gives Haid Calder the opportunity to kill the Chaos Lord leading the Word-bearers.
Man, what a fucking giga shad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you know what's more badass than a loyalist word-bearer Contemptor Dreadnought?
Oh, what?
A named Contemptor Dreadnought from the Minotaur's chapter, Hecaton Aiakos.
Ah, Hecaton Aiakos. So basically, Hecaton Aiakos, or just Aiakos, is one of the three named Hecaton pattern contemptors from the Minotaur's chapter, though he is by far the most infamous, with a bunch of edgy titles ranging from the Guardian of the Daedalus Krata to the Terror of the Bifrost. This dreadnought also has a little decorative shield on his shoulder.
It's not decorative.
No?
Aiakos' shoulder-mounted shield actually contains technologies which bolster the atomatic shield within his Contemptor Dreadnought.
As if he needs it. Well, in addition to those hacks, Aiakos is also equipped with a Contemptor Plasma Cannon and a Contemptor Power Fist with a built-in Stormbolter. All for shits and giggles, you know. And all of which he used during the Badab War when he boarded the Lamentor's flagship, the Mater Suspiria, where he then proceeded to gore, crush, and incinerate dozens of Lamentors.
Oh, those poor Lamentors, they just can't catch a break.
Aiakos' team killing doesn't end just there, though. During the Bifrost Uprising, the Minotaur's chapter and the Viper Legion chapter were sent to support the Bifrost Huskarl's regiment in repelling rebel forces. During one of the many battles, a Viper Legion sergeant ordered the Bifrost Huskarls to fire upon the location where Aiakos was located.
Oh, I bet he didn't like that.
Oh no, he didn't like that one bit. And so in response, Aiakos turned around and charged the Huskarls' front line, crushing almost 40 guardsmen to death. He even tore a Lehman Russ tank in half that was in his way, eventually killing the Viper Legion chapter sergeant that ordered a strike on him in the first place.
Not only that, but Aiakos would have continued his rampage if it wasn't for the Minotaur's chapter master, Asterion Moloch, sending him a personal communication requesting he desist.
To be fair, when Asterion Moloch asks you to stop doing something, you should probably stop with whatever you're doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now there's one more named dreadnought we should talk about.
Deeberan Kalimakon?
Yes. Now talking about Deeberan Kalimakon is kind of cheating a little bit, since he's not actually a space marine.
Ah, that's fine. He's still a dreadnought.
He's a dreadnought of the Legio Custodes. During the Battle of Cygnus Prime, Deeberan Kalimakon was one of the custodians that fought alongside the Blood Angels and Sanguinius against Kabunda and his horde of demons. Though at some point during the battle, a demon would manage to poison Kalimakon. This poison would go on to tear through the custodian's body, making his skin and flesh slough off in mounds of dead meat and gore.
But that didn't stop one of the most badass custodians to have ever lived, though, as despite his body basically being turned to mush and shit, he continued to fight without pause or rest for a ridiculous 18 hours straight.
After the battle was over, Deeberan Kalimakon would be placed in a Medicae stasis chamber for his voyage back to Terra, and upon his arrival he would be interred into the staggeringly massive Telemon pattern dreadnought. This dreadnought is without a doubt the most powerful dreadnought in Warhammer 40k, and Kalimakon is the only named pilot of one ever. On the tabletop, this dreadnought is able to go toe-to-toe with Greater Demons and Imperial Knights in melee and come out on top. The ranged weapons equipped on this thing are more commonly seen on enormous Custodes exclusive tanks. In addition to this incredible power, this dreadnought is capable of freakish agility as well.
Kalimakon would go on to fight in both the Solar War and the Siege of Terra, where he would slay untold quantities of traitors. Though, unfortunately, his final fate is unknown. He is without a doubt the single most powerful named dreadnought in the entirety of the setting.
Oh man, dreadnoughts are awesome.
They are awesome. Dreadnoughts are by far some of the most amazing characters we can talk about.
Sadly though, there is more to the Dreadnought experience than just these amazing characters. You see, it's common knowledge that being interred into a Dreadnought is a really exceptional honour. Some Space Marines spend their whole lives praying that honour will befall them, and that they'll get the chance to utilise these venerable relic killing machines their chapter has access to, especially in regard to the Iron Hands and their successors. To them, being interred into a Dreadnought is the greatest honour they can achieve, becoming one with a war machine blessed by the Emperor.
Also, side note, you know the Eyes of the Emperor?
The Custodes that are too old to continue their service, and essentially go into a form of exile as Imperial spies?
Yeah, exactly. See, sometimes when a custodian reaches that point in their life, they will request to be put into a dreadnought. despite being otherwise totally fit for duty.
That's actually really intense in the light of the fact that being put in a dreadnought is kinda horrific. You see, the process of becoming a dreadnought is actually a really sad one. To start off with, the Space Marine candidate needs to undergo horrific injuries in the line of duty to qualify. And because they're Space Marines, they can survive a lot more than normal humans. These injuries need to be far beyond things that can be fixed with just prosthetics and bionics.
And because of this, we can safely assume the pain these kinds of injuries produce must be well beyond what a normal human being can imagine. So you lay there in the dirt and mud. All you can hear is gunshots and the sound of death. All you can taste is your own mouth filling with blood and shattered teeth. Your legs are gone, your arms are gone, half of your face is probably missing too, and all you can feel is pain. Pain without compare. A Space Marine brother apothecary comes to you. If you're lucky, he may give you the option to receive the Emperor's mercy right there and then, a la bolt round to the skull. But in this case, all he does is pick your ruined body up and bring you post-haste to a medicastasis capsule of some kind.
Things go black, but you can hear sawing and grinding. You can feel pressure over different parts of your body, your skull, your spine, your chest, and the stumps where your arms once rested. And soon you awaken. Before you open your eyes, you realize you've lost even more of your body. They had to remove the excess to house you in your new sarcophagus. And as you open your eyes, you can see two things at once. You can see the blackness and a thin slither of light through the dreadnought tomb. And you can simultaneously see through the bionic optics outside of the dreadnaught's carapace. It's disorienting having two sets of eyes, but as you adjust, you try to move your arms. They're not there. You try to move your legs, and you can't. You try to turn your head, but it's bolted in place. And you try to breathe, but the machine breathes for you. You are now a dreadnought.
The fucked up thing is that when Space Marines are interred, they often experience true fear for the first time in their lives. Unable to speak, unable to move, unable to do anything except exist. What makes it even worse is that often the Space Marines in these contraptions will continue to experience the pain of their original injuries to lesser or greater degrees, although that depends on the injuries and the Marine. Most likely the only person you'll have to talk to again is the Tech Marine that tends to your sarcophagus and his descendants. As you sleep for hundreds and thousands of years, that Tech Marine will die, and so you'll never even get to know him properly before his eventual protege replaces him, and his protege will then replace him in kind.
The Dreadnought experience from this point onwards is nothing but pain and suffering, with brief moments outside of your endless slumber where you'll be distracted enough from your own torment by actually taking part in your chapter's battles. Unfortunately, something that makes this even sadder is that for a lot of Dreadnoughts, though not all, as the centuries go by, the mind of the Space Marine within the Dreadnought will begin to fracture and fray. In a lot of novels, one can draw very stark comparisons to the Space Marines that experience this, to the very real horrors of both Alzheimer's and dementia.
The truth is that sadly, the badass heroes we mentioned at the start of this video are all exceptions and outliers. All of them have managed to stave off the mental decline of being interred, though to differing degrees, as in the era Indomitus, neither the Anchorite or Bjorn are really their true selves anymore.
So whilst being a Dreadnought is one of the most badass things in 40k, it's ultimately an example without compare of the dichotomy between Warhammer's insane power high and its terrible, grimdark suffering.
Anyways, thank you so much for watching this third standard form video of ours, even if it got a bit depressing there at the end. If you enjoyed it, we would be so appreciative if you subscribed and liked the video. And also, drop a comment below about who your favorite Dreadnought is. We have a Discord link down below where it's very easy to get in touch with us and the other members of the team.
And we wanted to give a quick shout out to our tiny handful of patrons. You guys have really given us the drive to keep pouring our passion into this.
We'll see you guys next time.
Take it easy.